So there's one idea that I keep coming back to, one line that gets truer the older I get, which is don't be for sale. Don't allow yourself to be for sale. And I don't mean that in some motivational content way. I mean that in the most literal spiritual sense possible. So let me explain what I mean. From a Christian perspective, being for sale doesn't mean that you're greedy. It means that you've allowed your will to be rented. Every one of us, every single one of us has a God that we pretend not to worship. Not the one we talk about, but the God, and I mean this with a lowercase g, that we organize all of our anxiety around. For a long time, mine was making a living. Not wealth, not luxury, just money, period. Because when you frame it as making a living, it sounds innocent, it sounds responsible. But buried inside that phrase is a quiet lie, that life is something you earn and not something you receive from God with the big G. And once that flips, once earning replaces receiving, everything else rearranges itself around money. If you work for a company and your entire life bends around your job, if your worth, your self-worth, rises and falls with your productivity, if you sacrifice your health or your relationships or your conscience and call it discipline, congratulations. Your job just became your God. But that is the obvious version. We see this all the time. There's one step further, one thing that's more dangerous and subtler than that. And that's when money doesn't just shape your schedule, it shapes your perception. And you start treating every conversation like a transaction, every relationship like leverage, every interaction like it's quietly driving toward a wallet. And you're no longer present anymore. You're simply extracting. Here's what money as God does to a person. Nothing is allowed just to be good any longer. It has to be useful. Rest feels irresponsible. Silence feels unproductive. Friendship feels inefficient if it goes nowhere. And you stop asking, is this true? And start asking, is this safe? But then sometimes something happens. God, with the big G, strips everything away. Money, status, relationships, and you get real friggin' depressed. In my case, it was a pretty good financial collapse during COVID, and then the subsequent loss of a relationship that was enough to bring me to my knees. And here's the strange mercy in that moment. Everything I thought that was holding me up disappeared, but I was still there. And that's when fear loses its leverage, if you allow it. Because once you've actually lost everything, I mean really lost it, and you find God there, you realize the worst can happen, but it won't destroy you. And now this part matters. That may never happen to you. God may never strip everything away. He may allow you to keep succeeding. He may allow the money to keep flowing. And if that's the case, you still need to be on guard, because what I've witnessed in my life, what happens to people who never lose anything, people who get everything they want their whole lives, slowly, almost imperceivably, they start to come apart. And you see it in their 30s. I've seen it in their 30s, their 40s, their 50s, their 60s. I've seen it all the way into the people's 70s and 80s. Their relationships fall apart. Marriages are long gone. And almost always the marriages go first. Friendships, they have barely any friendships. They sue each other. Why? Because when money becomes God, people become interchangeable. Everything becomes transactional. No one needs anyone, and nothing is sacred. So if you haven't lost everything yet, don't assume that means you're safe. It just means the test hasn't arrived yet, which is why the rule still applies. Don't be for sale. Because once you've lived through loss, or even just understood it, something changes. You're not trying to impress anyone anymore. You're not angling every word toward advantage. You're not selling yourself in every conversation, because you're not for sale. And once you live that way, the world, I promise you, the world looks completely different. You start to notice how hurried everyone is, how anxious, how transactional it all is. Not because they're corrupt, but because they're afraid. And here's the irony that no one tells you. As you age, the people who aren't for sale become magnetic. They're rare. They're so rare. Not because they're rich, but because they're real. They listen to you. They're present. They don't need or want anything from you. And these people tend to get invited everywhere, not because they have all the money, but because they kept their soul and people notice that. I would rather be that man than have everything because money makes a terrible God. It can be taken from you in a second. It demands everything of you and it will never love you back. So don't be for sale, not because money doesn't matter, but because your life is worth more than anything that it can buy. And remember, all things come from God with a big G.